like a slowing down, and this is something that Tashin Fogelman wrote like a blog post about. Like disfluency was the topic. Basically, like, can you slow down long enough just to like engage a little bit more frictionfully with the world that you're in, and that way you slow down and have to think a little bit and make slower decisions. And mapping's a really good thing for like slow decisions. And
Mm,
with that, I think we're live. I think there might be people
awesome.
here. So I'm gonna. I this is the first time I've set up a button to tweet. So I'm gonna hit the button, and we'll see if it tweets it out that we're live. It seems to think
Cool.
so. Awesome. We are live with Rick and an avatar of a puppy. No, I'm just kidding. My good friend Tyler, he's also been doing some administrative work. He's like fabulous. He's been helping me lock things down. He's going to be here today, helping us out. And Rick you're in the nonprofit sector. Is that right?
That's right. I'm
Okay.
with, oh, you can't see it because the blue on the camera. I'm with ICMIF. So, yeah, I work for an organisation who's been around for about 100 years, that will have done in next year. So, I am the IT person, the IT manager. So, I handle all of the IT infrastructure. Worked there for about 8 years. It's just a great place to work for, great bunch of people. It's like quite a close-knit family. We're only a small organisation of about 20 people, but we service the cooperative and mutual insurance sector. So we are the International Cooperative and Mutual Insurance Federation. It's a bit of a mouthful. That's who we are. Yes, we kind of advocate for the CMI sector. And we kind of help them with fix the issues that they might have and connect people together. We put on events. It's really cool. Get to do a bit of traveling over your way a lot of the time in the States and stuff, so which is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, great place to work, and that's essentially where, if for anybody who doesn't know what a trade association is or a federation, it's just basically like a membership, similar to how I am a member of the British Computer Association in the UK. Cooperative mutual insurance and members of us. It's as easy as that.
So when you say CMI, what's that all about? Like, what if this is a trade association and like this is on behalf of like what kind of industries and things like that? Like, could you provide a little
So
more, few more
yeah,
words?
yeah. So literally, we just cater to the. So obviously, you've got insurance as a whole. And with insurance, you've got your traditional sort of capitalist, if I can say that, capitalist insurance companies, and you've also got cooperative and mutual insurance companies. So we literally just cater to the cooperative and mutual insurance companies.
Okay. Okay.
Um, but there are trade associations. So there's an overarching trade association that's for all of the cooperative mutual companies that, whether it's banking or maybe even grocery stores. We in the UK, we've got a co-op grocery store, which started off, I believe the whole movement started off in a place in Rochdale in the UK by a group of people called the Rochdale Pioneers. So it's really quite interesting, and it was all about essentially purchasing. I think it started off as purchasing things in bulk, essentially so rather than being somebody who's taking the profit out of it, it was a case that everyone pulled the resources together and purchased, and then you became
Mm,
a member, so you benefited from it in that respect. And
okay.
interestingly, the co-op in the UK, the actual literal grocery store, still you can still be a member and then get sort of like almost like dividends back. So
Oh,
based
wow.
on how much profit they make. So it's really kind of socialist in nature. I know that's a bit of an evil word. I know. Don't say it. Don't say it. But it is in some respects, and and it's for the betterment of society. At least that's what I believe, and that's what I think it is. It's about really sort of feeding back into the community, and some of our members are really on board. We've got one in Holland who it's all about being close to the communities and servicing the communities. And of course, insurance is pivotal to that. If you haven't got insurance, you're not protected in your time of need. So it really plays into the ethos
Mm,
insurance of being cooperative and mutual.
that's
So
fantastic. And
mm,
so, like, moving in the direction of like how you happened upon Wardley Mapping. You mentioned another group that you're a part of. So tell me about
yeah.
like how this became something that you were interested in and why.
So so I've kind of it's where to start. I don't want to go too far back and bore you, but So I'm, like I said to you before, but I'm kind of a little bit late to the party. So I got into the IT industry fairly late in life. Did customer service and sales and stuff before that, but got into the IT industry, and I've always been, I started off, of course, on the service desk, as most IT people probably have done, and I've kind of worked my way up from there. And it's got to a point now where I really want to get into more sort of like a leadership domain and start, really looking at things like strategy and operating models and mapping things out like Wardley Maps. And I spoke to a guy from the BCS, because the BCS connects you together with people, with like-minded individuals.
Did you say
that guy,
British
Computer Society. So
awesome,
it's the professional association for IT professionals, I guess. So so I spoke to Alex Farr, who I think is probably listening. So thank you very much, Alex. So he put me onto Wardley Maps. I think he might have actually given me your web address. I'm assuming it's your website. But I've looked at so much stuff, Ben. I've looked at so much stuff. So, I've got, like I showed you before, I've got the book, I've got your workbook, and gone through so many different things. But Alex put me in. It sort of connected me with Wardley Maps. I've looked at your website. I've listened to a podcast, I think, that you did recently with it CFO. I can't remember what the name of the guy was. Yeah, CFO. So and I started to think, well, maybe this, is something a tool I can put in my belt, and not only just for looking at IT systems, but maybe I can bring it back to the organisation and say, I've looked at this, and this looks like something we can use, because we're going through a period of change at the moment. So I'm hoping it can really apply it. So I mean, even if it doesn't work out for IT, and thinking, well, maybe it's not the best thing. I don't really know. We're going to find out, I guess, in the session.
Excellent.
But I know this is a really complex and fit for purpose tool in terms of looking at how things change, where you are, where you want to go with things, or where they may go. So read through the first sort of 100 pages of that book, that very dense book, which is just so insightful, that Simon's written. It's just so insightful, so much there. I know there is so much I can benefit from this. So again, I just want to thank you for inviting me on. I want to thank you for creating the YouTube videos, and also the massive information you came back to me on actually asking those questions in the first place. So thank you very much, Ben. It's appreciated.
Well, I really appreciate you being open to me publishing the answers to those questions too. Like, so for those of you who might not have seen, I guess we did our first Ask Ben column, Ask a Wardley Mapper, I don't know, something like that, on learnwardleymapping.com. It's the most recent article, and it's about nonprofits and IT systems, and it was Rick's questions, basically. And I'm really glad that you're here as well. And I think,
awesome.
So we're going to dive in very shortly, but what I'll just mention before we dig in is there's so much material. You're right. It's a dense book. There's a lot of information. It's a lot to process. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. If you have sufficient purpose, you're taking on new responsibility, or you can tell that you're kind of moving in that direction, and you have enough time, patience, and I think courage. A lot of where people get stuck is they don't have enough time to sit with the material, or they're not getting the value that they want right away, and it's frustrating. So there's not it's easy to be impatient when digging into this material. Yeah. And then the other thing is just being afraid of doing it wrong. I like to break people of that habit of I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. And as we were discussing before the call, just being willing to be hands-on and just dive in is half the battle. And yes, there's so much to learn and apply, but let's bite off a little piece of it at a time. Yeah. One of the things I tell people when I work with them is, you're not going to map everything and suddenly have complete understanding. In fact, the fact that we can only think so much, we can only have so much cognitive ability, we only have so much time, so much energy and to put towards understanding and absorbing information, we're going to run into a barrier that is the asymptote of infinite potential knowledge, right? So what we need to do is just know a little bit more every day, and just understand a little bit more of the system every day, and create little pockets of coherence, and I think pay down the knowledge debt of how things are designed bit by bit in an organization. Because a lot of times things are designed unintentionally, and we're kind of, when we're mapping, we're reconciling with that. We're oh no, this is not done on purpose. Okay, we have to make it purposeful again. So with that, I see you're in the mirror board, and I'm going to switch to a view here so folks can see the mirror board as well. So let's get started. You started this off with like a discussion of IT systems with me, and I'm kind of curious if you could tell us a little bit more about you're doing IT things in general, right? So like, it sounds like you've been having a lot of conversations about these systems. So tell me about those conversations.
So we've been talking about where it's kind of sort of the conversations are catalyzed from is from the fact that I think firstly, like you've just mentioned there, there's a lot of information sort of sat within my mind that really needs to be out of my mind and on paper. Because if I, for instance, if I left ICMIF or for whatever reason couldn't come back one day, they need to know how this works. So there's that's a factor involved. That's one conversation. I think that it's possible, and there's unknowns. I think when you know that you don't know. The known unknown. Who was it said that? Was it a general, American general? So it was known unknowns. So I feel like there's things that I don't know. I feel like maybe getting this onto paper and seeing it mapped out will help me answer questions. And I think that's kind of the whole point in the map, isn't it? It doesn't give you answers. You have to look for the answers. The answers are buried there. And I think somebody said that, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a map is like worth a million. I'm sure I read that somewhere looking at Wardley maps. And it makes sense, it's there, but we need to kind of extract that information out, extract those answers out of it. So, so that was the other thing, is the fact that, I'm writing an IT strategy. I kind of need to be able to visualize the systems and how they connect together and things like that, and that's kind of what sort of made me start thinking and asking the question of how do I map it out? And then, of course, at that point, Alex said, take a look at Wardley maps. So
Excellent. Perfect. Yeah, and just a note for Tyler, who's also on the call, that was like a perfect description of why we should why one might get into Wardley maps, right? Like you start to see the barrier of your knowledge and all this fun stuff, and you got to step into it. So perfect. Oh yeah, thumbs up from Tyler. Excellent. Okay, so with that intro, perfect. So you mentioned with the conversations that you've been having, like, and you're doing like exactly what I tell my clients to do when they're first learning Wardley mapping. You're not starting with too much all at once. So like the typical way people do this is they're like, okay, I've got to make this map thing and I've got to get all the parts. And so they like dump out like 100 parts onto a map. And then like before you know it, they've got a mess that they're trying to make sense of. And basically this gets messier and messier and messier, and they get lost and lost and lost. What happens is the friction of the process starts to overwhelm their ability to get any value from it. So what I always suggest is exercising restraint. And there are like two ways to exercise restraint. If you're going to make a map, one of the things I suggest is starting with fewer parts at the beginning. Okay. And just like sticking with those fewer parts all the way through the process to the end, where you're making decisions about those parts. Excuse me. And you're deciding how to be intentional about those parts of the system. There's that way. The other way is to actually like don't make a Wardley map at all, because to make a Wardley map requires you to go through several other like sub kind of processes, right? Like you have to know who your users are. Do you know who your users are? And like you could just stop right there. Every meeting that you have from here until the end of time, can you make sure that everyone in the room is clear who is being served by us having this meeting? Or we're having a meeting to discuss such and such incentives around our membership structure or whatever. Okay, well, who's this for? Well, on the one hand, it's for the users. On the other hand, it's also for the potential users to entice them. And like, as soon as you like can do that consistently, you're already being more purposeful because you're focused on who you're here to provide value to.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. I think those questions have been popping up in my mind as well in terms of, so, there's a few things I wrote down, and it was kind of like, if you're mapping out IT systems with Wardley maps, you just start with like, just start out with, doing it per person. You start with the overall systems. Do you map out a system? I was kind of thinking, where on earth do you start with this?
We could start like high, you can, and very high level. You could go low and like low level and just take off a slice of it. I usually tell people to start where the pain is. Like, what's hurting right now? Like, don't treat this as like not all knowledge is the same, right? So like, which things do we need to know first in order to relieve the pain that's already happening in the system earlier rather than waiting until we have the whole thing at the end.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Yeah, because why would you map out the things that are working okay? Is there any point? You may as well start with the difficult bit and then move on to that later if need be. Yeah, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, Tyler, that's a good
So,
one for pain relief there. Okay, so what hurts?
well, good question. So right now we're in a bit of a tough spot. So we want to move into being a data-driven organization. And they'll probably kill me to say this. I feel like we're operating currently like in the late 90s. You know, we've got like spreadsheets and stuff, and people are like just, you know, recording bits of the stuff you just shouldn't be recording in a spreadsheet, getting to the limit of an Excel, and you know, literally the cell is full, you can fit no more characters in it. So we're sticking everything we've got into spreadsheets, and the reality is it's not a great place to store it, because it just doesn't work for certain types of, you know, especially for like textual blocks of text, it doesn't work. And we are not getting the information back out of it. There's no sort of logical way of querying this information. I guess, you know, you could create some sort of custom interface, you know, with VBA or something. But the reality is, as it stands at the moment, it's a manual process. It's a manual process to get it in there. It's a manual process to get the information out. It's a manual process sorting it in there. You know, that is a massive pain point for us at the moment.
Okay. So let's play with this a little bit, because there's a lot of work that a lot of people have done around just like how you manage a data pipeline. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but like basically from the beginning, right? How does data like come to exist? Well, there's some sort of collection thing happening. So where is the data coming from in this case? Is it, you're saying manual entry? Is it just people typing?
So this is where it gets complicated, Ben. This is where it gets really complicated. So obviously there are probably some gaps in my knowledge here, but I'll give it my best shot. So we're collecting now, will we? We're collecting data from, it could be phone calls. So I mean, there's a manual process which you're probably not going to get around. Because obviously the aim for us is to automate stuff really as much as possible. Okay. So you're going to have phone calls, you're going to have websites. So for instance, the members will publish something they may have done on their website, on the news section on the website. There's Twitter, there's LinkedIn.
Oh dear. All right, so already we're seeing how this explodes, like out sideways. Yeah. So let's start with the phone calls, since that one was the first one on your mind, and like we can expand from there. But let's fire like a trace all the way through the system, all the way to the value that it provides. So starting from a phone call, somehow that makes it into data entry. Like, so what kinds of things are being discussed on phone calls? Like, tell us about that a little bit.
So again, I'm not too close to phone calls, being the IT person, but with that being said, what will generally, I think, at least what I understand to happen is that somebody will potentially, either we will contact a member organization because maybe we've got some sort of prior knowledge and say, you know, what pain, you know, we will be saying to them, what pain points are you suffering at the moment? What issues are you having? Or maybe they've contacted us. So that those phone calls will come about probably in that way. And what's actually being discussed is so for instance, let's say, and this is just me with not an insurance background, it could be something like one of our members wants to set up agriculture, you know, sort of agricultural insurance, and then we've got, if for instance in the UK we've got the National Farmers Union Mutual, and they obviously do exactly that. So we could have a member in Australia who wants to set up a line of business in agricultural insurance, and then we got the NFU on the other side, where we can join them together and say, right, we know somebody here who's going to help you set this up.
Okay. So you get a request, like someone's asking for something. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's focus on like the inbound scenario real quick. So folks watching at home, you're noticing I'm already like pruning things from the map, just because I'm trying to get like a crystal clear, razor sharp focus on something small that we can play with and really deeply understand. And then as we iterate, we can expand out and start making more maps around this kind of thing. So like, let's say inbound phone calls. I've got a request, and so there's someone like collecting that request. And listening on the other end. So like, would you call it like request handling? Is that like or what would you call that?
So I wouldn't think of it in like the case of like a call center. It's definitely nothing like that. So we're a small team, bearing in mind, and we have individuals assigned to regions around the globe. So
okay, so it's more like an account executive or something, or sort of. Okay, so there's a relationship in place here. Okay.
Generally speaking, yeah. So there are some members that we know better than others, which is another pain point. We want to kind of get to know all members as well as each other. So, but yeah,
got it. Okay,
there will be a relationship. Yeah.
So let's call this like the what would you call that work? Like the work that the account executive is doing, or whatever you would call that. Like what are they doing?
So I think maybe the general term and what we've labelled it as is knowledge brokering. So knowledge brokering, yeah.
Like knowledge brokerage or brokering. I like ing words.
Brokerage, yeah.
Knowledge brokering,
yeah. Okay. Or in the UK, apparently it's broking. I found out yesterday. There's a difference between British English and American English. So there you go.
Very good. Okay, excellent. So phone calls are like enable this knowledge brokering, and then somehow like things happen inside that bucket of activities that produces data. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's like manual data entry of some kind. Okay, and that entry gets placed into spreadsheets?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna say this could be wrong. I'm skipping ahead just a little bit, but like I'm kind of expecting like, okay, collection depends on brokering depends on phone calls, and then collection depends on spreadsheets. Like you need to put the data somewhere for storage, or how is that the relationship thing, or how does this work?
So when we speak to a member, when we collect information, because there is an in and out to this, isn't there? There's information coming in, there's information going out, but the spreadsheet is essentially collecting. So if somebody has a request, then we want to record that request. But if somebody, so think of it in some ways as issues and competencies, maybe. So if we've got a member who has an issue, and then we've got members who have competencies, so we want to kind of record both, and that spreadsheet is serving as that purpose. If that makes sense.
Okay, so I'm making a note of some things here. I heard requests, competencies, and issues, and this. Let's talk about. Is that what's being collected? Like there are requests, and they are of type competencies or issues. Yeah, for sure. And there's also. Yeah, so in some ways, though, the competencies wouldn't necessarily come. I mean, it might come from a phone call, but they also might come from a website. They might come from Twitter or LinkedIn or so various places. Okay, and then what comes out the other end of the data entry? Like, I guess like what is the role that the spreadsheets are playing here? Are they just storage?
Yeah, in some ways it's storage, but also, the reality is it is just storage, but it should really be producing information, reports, and we do produce reports out of it. In fairness, we do produce reports, but it's all a manual process.
Okay.
So it is. We want to extract that information out. So it might be the case that somebody phones up and says, "Oh, I've got this issue." Then we would then refer back to this spreadsheet to see if there's anyone else who maybe could help solve the problem.
Oh, okay. So in order to really like the whole point of having like a bunch of people doing something together is to be able to be better together, right? So like, if someone's having an issue and we've solved this before, or there's another person like let's connect you to who's having that issue, if you can't do that, then the value of being connected in a collective is like it's lessened. So okay, so what I'm hearing you say is, for example, phone calls enable this knowledge brokering activity.
Yeah.
The brokering activity enables data collection of some kind. The place where that data is going is like a spreadsheet, and then that enables potentially. Or at least in like some one-off instances or whatever your regular reporting looks like, there's some sort of like information being produced, like, and that information being, and then like that produces, what would you call the thing that it produces?
Good question.
So like for the example of like, hey, this person also has that issue, or we've solved this before. Like, what would you call that?
So I'm not sure how you would term it. I guess it's funny, really. I've not got a full answer for you there, but it's essentially it's data on our membership is what we're collecting. So maybe you could call it membership data, but or member data.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you actually have a term for it, but yeah, understand. Yeah.
Okay. So is the member data what is in the spreadsheets? Or
Yeah,
is
sure.
there...
Yeah.
Well,
There would be.
notice we're doing something weird here. We're making up words. Like,
Yeah.
it's wild, right? Like, so like member data,
Yeah.
I feel like member data meant something else though than to you when you were describing it just now, than literally what's in the spreadsheet. So like, I'm just going to put this down here. So let's dig into that. So out of the spreadsheets comes some sort of information.
Yeah.
And that information enables decisions to be made. It enables actions to be taken. And the kinds of actions and decisions that it enables are like tightly aligned with what is inside that data. So you gave an example of, gathering two people who have the same problem so that they can put their heads together, or maybe we can help them have a conversation or something along those lines. That, I mean, is that knowledge brokering? Is that like
That's what we, as far as I'm aware, that is what we would refer to as knowledge brokering. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So knowledge brokering is not just this one process of taking in a request. Like there's knowledge brokering as the part of like request handling. I don't know. I'm just making this up. Tell me if that's wrong. And then there's knowledge brokering as in connecting.
So I feel like the overarching name for this whole process is knowledge brokering. So it would be a case of
Got it.
and what's interesting, Ben, is that I'm trying to sort of describe where we are now, but there's also where we want to be.
Of course,
and yeah, what all we've got at the moment is a spreadsheet where we're storing this information almost in a temporary holding area to try and get to a point of where we can get it into a database and use AI tools to maybe start getting the information out of it.
Got it. Okay.
Automatically.
That makes sense. And I love that we've kind of like outlined kind of where we want to go. Now let's like get specific on this and just like fix some of the terms and then push through the process, and then we'll do kind of like a before and after kind of action kind of plan thing. So, okay, I heard you say that this whole process is knowledge brokering, and I think that means we can use specific language here, and maybe tell me if these are the wrong words, but I'm just going to put a bold suggestion out there that, look, I'm not afraid of being wrong. I'm wrong all the time. I'm wrong right now. How wrong am I? Am I importantly wrong, or am I unimportantly wrong in using the words like request handling and connecting?
No, I think it's a fair description. So if we're talking about connecting, so we're connecting members together. If somebody phones up, if a member phones up and specifically says, "I have this issue," technically you are handling their request. Makes sense. Yeah, so obviously, the rest of it, information reporting. Yeah, that's what we're getting out. Yeah, I mean, I can't take issue with any of with the terminology we've used so far. So,
okay. And look, they're going to be the wrong words. What we're doing right now is inventing an ontology, and it's either things that have words already that we don't know, and so we have to go find them. And for the moment, we have to have placeholders, or they're words that are genuinely novel, at least inside the four walls of this organization, if they have walls. And like, we have to invent it and just roll with it and see if someone comes up with a better word and adopt that better word as it comes along. And like maps in a sense are like bearing or containing all the words that we can use to describe problems. It's like, I usually talk about how the specificity of the language matters. Like if you go to your doctor or your GP or whatever, and you're like, hey, this hurts, and they're like, okay, what hurts? This one. And they're like, okay, that's called an elbow. Does your elbow hurt? And they're like, no. Like, oh, it's like here. Oh, you mean your wrist? Yes. Okay, so now we have specificity of language, and so like as a patient, you have words now to describe your experience, and that's really, really, really important. And there's like hashtag feminism on that. So talk back for another day. Anyway, so and note for Tyler, that whole section about like naming things, we need to like find more examples of helping people name things. And so that if we could piece together something around that, that'd be awesome. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your thumbs up. Okay, so these words are wrong, but they're good enough for us to keep moving. So let's do that. We've got I'm gonna copy all this stuff over, and there's one final thing we should do, which is like talk about I'm gonna leave requests behind. I'm gonna leave formats behind for now. Um,
Okay.
so here's our system off to the right in our value chain section in our template. And for those of you following along at home, if you want this template, you can get it here at lwm.events/1. So here's our system. Who's this serving? Like, what is this whole thing, or who is this whole thing supposed to provide value to?
So it is literally our membership, our network of members. They are ultimately our, where our value proposition, lands with them.
Okay. And what's like this knowledge brokerage thing? What does it do for people? Like, so you can go very simple, like, oh, they just get to meet each other, or they get to work on the similar problems, or you can go deep and you're like, it gives them fulfillment. It helps them feel like they belong. Like you can go as however which way you want to go with that. What's it doing for them?
So I think literally it is solving problems. And interestingly, I was having quite a good conversation with, so I'm getting tripped out here because I've got, when you place these two screens on the wrong side, I have to remember each time. So interesting, I had a conversation with one of my colleagues, and we used Miro to map out some stuff, and we were looking at what we perceive to be, our activities that backed up our value proposition. And we feel that actually, we hold webinars, we do conferences, obviously pre-pandemic, we do specialist conferences, governance meetings, professional development, and then what we call knowledge brokering, and then there's like even an influence piece that we've got where we're involved with like the UNDRR and the IDF, these international working groups, and we sort of traced it all back in the end to the fact that we are disseminating information to the membership. We're taking information out of the membership and then putting it back in, if that makes sense.
It's like recombining. There's something. I think it was Prasanna who runs Upeka B, which is like a startup accelerator for SaaS companies in India, and he told me about something called effectuation. And one of the principles of effectuation, or the ideas of effectuation, is that like creating a patchwork of like, you don't actually need to just like build everything yourself. Like you can join communities and become part of those communities, and like for example, money is cheap for some people. For other people, time is cheap, and for others, yet their skills and experience are like readily available and cheap for them. So like creating a patchwork of mutually beneficial kind of win-win relationships, I think is the idea behind that patchwork idea in effectuation. And that kind of sounds sort of similar, where like, hey, by connecting the dots between these folks, they can find each other, and then a new set of possibilities is born. It's created, and it's different than the way things were before. And so, I think what your organization is saying is that the futures that you're creating are better than the ones where you're not brokering knowledge and connecting people.
Yeah, that would be fair to say. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I would agree.
So right now, like, one of the questions we had earlier was like, how do you know where to start and what parts to map and what to get coverage on? It just became very apparent to me as we were talking through this. You were describing like events and knowledge brokerage and all this other stuff. Like, if you start from the perspective of the user and what they're getting, and then worry about the minimum viable system to produce that value for them. Yeah. Like that's one way that can be effective. Like sometimes people just like, that's too far away. Like if they're really far removed from the user, like most of the time that's the way it is in an enterprise. Then we're like, okay, just map the things around you that you're touching every day and then start moving towards the user. But if you have that kind of high level view of who's getting what, roughly, start from the user and work your way back to where you are. And that's going to help guide your mapping, because if you invest a lot of time in a subsystem that is not actually connecting back to a user need, then priorities are questionable, right? It's like, what's going on there?
Makes complete sense. And what's interesting about that is I think how our conversation started is in some ways, from an IT point of view, the customer is internal, isn't it? It's the staff. In most respects, I mean, arguably, you could say when you talk about the website, maybe that is the members will access our website, our knowledge hub that we have online, and then that is completely visible to them. But for the most part, with IT, it's internal people, it's internal customers.
Got it. Okay. So let's just get this moving a little bit.
Cool.
Members, let's create some relationships. Members need to have problem solved. Is that right? Okay. So
I would agree with that.
So do you mind like grabbing the pen tool in Miro and just like help me connect the dots here? Like what depends on what else? Like we kind of have it already like figured out because we limited ourselves to just a few parts, but just like draw those relationships. Like what depends on what else? And
right. So so for sure, let's just do the easy one first to kick off with. So members need problem solving. To solve the problems we need, I got it from your videos, do the needs chain. So we need to collect that. Yeah, that makes sense. That will be. We can't solve anyone's problems if we don't have data already. So we need to have collected data. Sorry, it's not a great line. And
so just double checking there. So the connecting.
Connecting. Yeah, sorry, I missed
I think
that.
I think our connecting conversation was about like what comes out of the information reporting.
Collection there. Yeah.
So does that connection activity of like, oh, you need a thing and you need a thing, let's put you two together. Is that what comes out of information reporting? And then
I would have said so. Yeah, that would come out of the information reporting. You would need to because if somebody has a request, because we also want to automate that as well. We want to be proactive, not just reactive. So we don't just wait for somebody to come to us and say we have a problem. We want to know beforehand that they have a problem and then try and solve it for them.
Is it fair to say that in order to solve problems, you need to connect people together?
Yeah, that would be a fair thing to say.
Okay.
Although maybe do you think we could be skipping steps in between there?
Almost definitely. Yeah, there's probably a ton of stuff in between those things. So like let's mark that as like as a place of further investment for later. I'm just going to draw a circle there. We know we need to explore those relationships, but let's just like finish this out. Like roughly, you said you've got a relationship there, and does it just go all the way down? Like let's finish these connections and just see what depends on what else.
So what we're saying is members need the problem solving. To solve the problems, we need to connect those members. To connect those members, we do need to pull reports on. I'm trying to what I'm struggling with here now. Seeing this right now is thinking, am I missing something? And I guess
you're missing tons of stuff. You're missing so much, Rick. You're missing the universe, right? Like there's so much. The closer you look, the closer you look, the more you'll find, right? So
yeah, definitely. So fine. So we got that. So the members need to solve the problems. Then to do that, we need to connect the members. To connect the members, we need to pull a report. Sorry, I'm using a really bad tool here. It's just
it's perfect. Tool. It's perfect and it's messy, and that's Yep.
Cool. Great. So we need to pull reports. The data needs to be. So the member data needs to be. So that needs member data. To pull the reports, we need member data. To get member data, we need to store it. Got it. Before we store it, we need to collect it.
Okay.
And to collect it, we need to handle requests, and definitely stuff missing there.
Excellent.
And to handle the request, we would So I feel like that
awesome.
Goes in a logical order.
we did it. We got a value chain. Yes.
Awesome.
And you're totally right. Like you said, there's like a lot of stuff hanging out here and the request handling stuff. And part of what we're doing is we're just as you mentioned before about unknown unknowns. Now they're becoming known unknowns. Like there are known unknowns here and there are known unknowns here. Like we know we need to go find out more about those, but like also what I want us to do is get some I want to get the payoff. I want to like make mapping worthwhile and like it not just be like a frustrating endless slog to model the world and the universe, but like we got something from that. Tomorrow we'll do the next thing. So what we can do to get from here to there is let's drag these things over one by one and start redrawing those connections. So I'm going to just like copy members over here onto the Wardley map to the right. Solving problems. Let's add evolution to the mix. Is solving problems for these members, where does that fall on the evolutionary spectrum? Is it like a gamble?
So solving problems for the members, is it a gamble? Really good question. And this is the bit that I feel like when I started looking at Wardley maps that I would struggle with is actually understanding where they come on this evolution chain, this evolution sort of flow or process. So Is it a gamble? Good question. Solving problems. So I suppose it's a gamble if we don't have the information. So in some ways, yeah, I think you could definitely place it in the custom built column. I don't know if it's all the way into the Genesis column, but I think you could place it in the custom built, because the reality is we've got to assemble that data there. We've got to have the data there and to know if there is somebody to solve that problem.
Okay.
So
just like the contrast, it's like over here, it's like we have no clue if us solving these people's problems will ever be what they want. Whereas over here, it's like you're just a request, like you're trying to process as many requests as possible because everybody needs everything. Like it's demands that you're dealing with. So you think it's kind of in the middle here, where it's like it's a decent bet that if we provide this for our members, that they'll get value and that they'll get what they need. Does that seem right?
I think so.
Okay,
yeah,
excellent.
I think so, yeah.
Perfect. And I'm going to real quick just redraw that dependency line. And I'm purposefully, for those of you watching at home, I'm purposely doing this the messy way. You could totally mess with lines in Miro if you wanted to and all that fun stuff. They're just a little fussy sometimes. It can be worth it. But anyway, that's a problem for another day. Okay, so members need to have their problem solved. Okay, let's do the next one down, connecting. I'm just going to drop this onto the map. I'm going to start making these a little bit smaller too, so we can fit them all on here. So where does connecting fit from left to right? Hard one, huh?
These are so tough, and I knew I'd struggle with this as well. So and it's the bit that I looked at. I thought, how do you place these things?
Okay, come down here underneath the table where it says evolution qualities. Can you find me down here? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you've watched the stream before, like you've always seen me like play with failure, because I love failure so much. It's like so good to evoke what each of these stages entails. So just like read these for a second and see which one feels right for connecting people together.
So I think we could place that probably in the custom built column. So it's potentially, because it all depends on the information, doesn't it? It all depends on what information you have. You don't have that information there, then there's a high likelihood of failing. You know. So
let's double check it with certainty. So right now we're thinking that it's a stage 2 kind of thing. Let's talk about certainty. So do you think it's poorly understood? Are you rapidly increasing the learning? Or is it just kind of like slotting into that thing that everybody needs, rapid increases in use?
No, I don't think it is. I think the reality is we know that we don't have enough data. We know we can't manipulate the data in the way we want to. I think it's stage 2. I don't think this is... I mean, it could be stage 1. It could be.
Okay.
But no,
well, that's good enough for me, though. Like, you've got a gut feel that it's really, like, it's not important whether you, like, get it 2 pixels to the right or 2 pixels to the left, right? It's important that you get it roughly, like... Honestly, like, on the left half of the map or the right half of the map. Like, if you do that on the first try, like, you're in pretty good shape. And you can get more specific about it later.
And I think what's really cool about this, actually, though, is I'm sure I've heard you say this on a podcast or something, one of the videos, is that the reality is this is going to provoke questions. Yeah. It's going to provoke debate. Yep. And you're going to get, and I think as Simon said, not all maps are accurate or something, but they should be useful. So that's the reality. Is I'm going to create this. It's probably not going to be a fully accurate representation of what's 100%. Happening or how it is, but it's going to invoke questions, which is awesome.
Perfect. Yep. Yeah, and a note for Tyler there, that whole section where we like tried to categorize based on the evolution qualities and made that determination and pixels to the left, right, all that fun stuff. That's another one. We've got to get that message out there as much as we can. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so we've got connecting. Let's get information reporting on here. And we're going to do the same thing for as many of these as we can here real quick. Talk to me about information reporting.
Right, information reporting. Again, this is something that we're doing. It's a manual process. It's definitely not commoditized. It's not something that is just being churned out. We can't just click a button and get a report, and it's consistent. It has to be done manually. And I'm going to go with custom built. I almost feel like we're going to fill this custom built column. I just can't place things in products and commodity. It's just too much in its infancy and too unrefined.
Okay. Perfect.
So,
And I think like that's great because in a lot of cases when you're growing, you kind of have to understand how things work. And so sometimes you like, well, you've got to get your hands dirty before you can like do the easy thing. Sometimes it's the other way around where like, well, you just like buy the product and just live your life and it's perfect. Other times, especially when there's a lot of nuance in what you're doing, like you really need to start from like this place of appreciating just a little bit too many of the details. So yeah, 100% get it. Okay, so information reporting and custom built. Talked about member data.
So it's an interesting one, and maybe I could get some advice from you with that one, Benny. So when we talk about member data, how do you place that in?
I'm glad you asked.
One of these categories. How do you?
So down here at these tables again.
Yeah.
Under evolution labels.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh yeah. There you go. Unmodeled, divergent, convergent, modeled.
Okay, so like basically if you don't have a data model, right, it's in stage 1.
Yeah.
If you're kind of playing around and you're trying a lot of different like models to model a user, like maybe you've got 10 different systems and each of them have a different model of the user, then you're definitely like in a divergent mode, right? Because you're trying to model in many different ways all at once. Eventually you'll start to notice that stuff converging. Like, we're reducing our variety. We're kind of trying to land on one particular model of the user. And eventually it's like, we completely understand everything about the user. There's exactly one model and it's perfect. So where do you think you fit into there?
We're 100% not at stage 4. I don't think we're at stage 3. And again, we like I said before, I could suspect that, we're somewhere in stage 1 or 2.
Okay.
And your comment on, understanding, the user, entirely understanding the user, the data is modeling. It's just, I just don't believe we're at that point. So I do feel that I almost want to say unmodeled. I think unmodeled.
Okay, let's do it.
Maybe being a bit harsh, but
honestly, being a little bit harsh can provoke some really interesting conversations. Because, like, wait, are we really that unadvanced or whatever? Or are we really that early stage? And that's the perfect conversation point because the answer is like, I don't know. Are we? Like, let's go find out.
Yeah.
If you want to be, here's the thing. Like, if you want to be a data-driven organization, like, you're at least going to have the ability to look at a detailed level where data is even available and accessible. It's like, we need data. Like, what are our models of the user? Like, let's find out. Let's go document that stuff. And now we have data. Like, okay, so perfect. Yeah. Okay, let's just push the rest of this through. Okay, I moved the wrong one. So information reporting was over here. Member data was over here. Storage spreadsheets.
Storage spreadsheets. I mean, that's totally custom built. That literally exemplifies custom built, wasn't it? If you're storing stuff in spreadsheets, you've made the spreadsheet, you've set it out, you've laid it out. It's custom built.
Yeah, and there's an important difference here too between like this specific spreadsheet and spreadsheets at large, like spreadsheet solutions. Like I could have like a quick little argument that like, hey, spreadsheet solutions are basically like ubiquitous in a certain sense. I don't know. You could fight me on that maybe, but like that enables the storage and all that fun stuff. But let's ignore that for now. Okay, digging deeper, collection, request handling, phone calls. Let's get these on the map. Just go ahead and like drag them where you think they belong.
Okay.
And I'll give them here to you.
My pointer one. There we are. So okay. So the actual collection of the data entry. Well, I think that's really difficult. I mean, suppose if somebody's entering the data into a spreadsheet. I mean, how do you define that on this scale? It's got to be somewhere here, hasn't it? Surely it's got to be in that stage. I can't see it being custom. It doesn't make sense.
I looking at practices for that because I'm imagining like it's a person on a phone and they've done this 100 times at least now, and they're starting to get like, okay, what are they doing every single 100 of those 100 times? Are they literally reinventing the wheel every single time, or are they starting to get a pattern or rhythm? Like there are 10 different ways this is going to work, or 4 different ways, or whatever. Where does it kind of fit? Like there are lots of good things to do, or there's one best thing to do. We're still finding out.
So it's a good point. Yeah, and I'm glad you sort of drawn me to that there. So the practice, I would imagine it's in stage 2. I'm going to stick with stage 3.
Okay.
But in reality, if we were to map this out and talk about the evolution of that aspect, that collection, What's interesting there is that we want to push that into an automated sort of space. We want to we want to push that into an automated way. So, it was sort of saying on one hand, we're sort of saying, yeah, it's advanced, but on the other hand, it's not really. Does that make sense?
100%. And this is the case with almost every automation case in the world. It's like you have to understand the manual process first and actually understand it to the degree that it is known and certain. Like if you try to automate something that has a lot of fuzziness to it and a lot of like heuristics and weird things that like, then you're in the world of like hurt, because you're going to try to automate things that are going to be very difficult to automate. And I often hear people say that like AI machine learning is like we'll just like toss some AI at it, and like certainly sometimes that like I'm sure for some applications that's useful, but of course like that comes with a lot of trouble too. Like you can't necessarily trace back how a decision was made, and a lot of the training data that AI and machine learning models are based on is like based on a particular archetype of people or a particular archetype of circumstances, and in the instant it crosses the threshold into a new domain or like a new kind of user or meeting needs that it wasn't expected to meet, you're gonna have trouble because like it'll be still making those decisions, but it's just like on the wrong thing. So, and that's how that's how you end up as a black person, like walking into a bathroom expecting the light sensor to turn on and it not detecting your skin because.
Really?
Yeah. You can go read articles after article about this problem being reproduced over and over and over again because, like, it's just nobody thought to test it on a person.
That's crazy.
It's like,
what? Well, obviously, I didn't know. That's absolutely nuts. I didn't know that at all.
That stuff's happening all around us too, like all the time. So it's like when we're making these maps, like. We're actually like taking the moment to design the system intentionally, and that's actually why like so everybody likes to do like lip service about like diversity and inclusion and stuff like that, but like this is actually a reason to have a lot of perspectives in the room looking at the system going, obviously that's not going to work for people like me, or I know people who have had experiences like this, and it's like the wider that net goes, the more potential varieties of like real world scenarios you'll be able to accommodate. In a way that actually produces value. And it's great. So looking at this...
The last one, Ben, was phone calls.
Yep.
I'm having a little bit of trouble with that one. Just sort of thinking about it. So phone calls, I mean, it's just... I guess it's here. I mean, taking a phone call. I mean...
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Kinda,
awesome. Yeah. Okay. So let's just clean up these relationships real quick. I'm just going to draw the ones that I think are here. So connecting depends on... reporting, right? And then
information reporting
depends on member data. Okay, member data depends on storage. And then I was a cheeky one. I added storage depends on spreadsheet
Oh really?
solutions.
I didn't notice that.
So like Google Sheets or Excel or whatever. And then we also put storage depends on collection. Collection depends on request handling, and request handling depends on phone calls. Oh, I love it. Look at that. Okay.
Awesome.
Excellent. So as a person in this moment where you've made your first value chain, like now is the moment to get something out of it. And so we got 6 minutes left. Let's go the default pathway, and then I'll just show you how to like do the interrogating of the map to get like you said earlier, the map doesn't give you any answers. It gives you places to look. And then you'll come up with the answers. But Simon has a whole bunch of spreadsheets, and what I've done is I've tried to like boil down some of his ideas into kind of like an opportunities thing. And I'm just gonna like let me see here. I'm gonna put a different version of this thing in here. If you go to lwm.events/opportunities, you can get this in a table form that you can print out. So I'm going to paste that in here. All right, off to the right here. And basically, I kind of think of this as like a meditative, reflective practice where you sit with your map and you ask your map questions. So starting from the top, let's start from connecting, okay? So think about what connecting looks like, feels like, what it entails. It's in custom built. Okay, people being connected based on information reporting. Okay, connecting. start at the top of this table here. Are we biased in how we approach connecting compared to others out there in the wide world?
Okay. So we've actually compared to others. So it's valuable.
Yeah. So look in the parentheses there, like.
So we treat component like it's in stage 2, while the rest of the world assumes it's in stage 4. No, I don't think that is a really tough question.
Yeah.
I had a great conversation with one of our SVPs earlier on about something similar to this, and this sort of comes into that whole was it the Red Queen thing that Simon Wardley talks about. So I suppose the question is there another service out there like this? And that's what I would then start to ask myself, and I'm not sure there is. But then can you compare it to something else? For instance, one of the great things that the SVP was talking to before said was that we need to improve the way we can search our website because you expect the same thing from Amazon. And that made me think about that whole Red Queen scenario that Simon Wardley talked about. So I suppose the question is there another service of a similar nature or something where connecting is this really sort of commoditized? I don't know. It's in answer to the question right now. I would still say I think it is in the appropriate place. I still think that is in the it's correct.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. So just to be super abundantly clear, making that decision is not wrong, even though I'm going to tell you that it's wrong after I tell you that. Or so like if you were like, yep, we're good. Connecting is where it needs to be. The rest of the world is treating connecting that way.
Yeah.
That excellent. You have questioned an assumption. You've come away saying, yep, we're good there. Let's move on. And that's the thing. You just keep moving on. And so then go down to the next part of the table.
Okay.
And we'll come back to connecting and bias in a second. But then you'd ask the next question. Use appropriate methods. Okay. Thinking about connecting. Okay, if connecting is in stages 1 or 2, which it is, I think, are we building it in-house, optimizing for new information, and changing direction? As opposed to outsourcing and adopting standard practices?
Yeah, so it's definitely an in-house thing. It's not. This is not automated. We're not outsourcing it. It is 100% done in-house. It's bespoke.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So what you're basically doing is you're checking. Like, are we doing this the right way? Based on what we know right now? Yeah? Okay, good. And then we're just moving on through the list of things. And so Simon's got his tables of doctrine and tables of climate patterns and tables of leadership gameplay moves. Like, you can look at every single one of those and basically ask, does that apply here? So Jevons paradox or whatever, does that apply here? And you got to do a little bit of reading, a little bit of Googling to find out what everything means. But that's the game. This is all we're doing right now is we're identifying potential wheres in the map to intervene. And so I'm gonna zero in on this connecting thing because I hinted at this earlier. So I guarantee you there are other people in the world connecting human beings together because of information. Guarantee.
True.
Here's the thing. Do they look like you? Do they do the same thing that you do? Are they in the same fields? Maybe, maybe not. So the question becomes, where could you learn, at least in an analogous sense, about other approaches to doing this kind of thing? So for example,
that's a great point, Ben.
Other memberships? Other memberships where connecting is one of the benefits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Can you find a membership that's well run, that connects people together?
Yeah, so there must be something, like you say, that's analogous to that. There must be something somewhere in the world. There's got to be, hasn't there, that you can kind of get some sort of ideas from, and you can extract those ideas out and improve. There has to be, doesn't there?
And now you have a purpose, right? Now the game, if you were to choose this intervention point, your purpose would be to go find that stuff out. And so you, Wardley mapping doesn't get you anything until you act and get feedback from the world in response to that action. So we have made a map. Yeah. We have noticed one place on the map that is important to notice things about. We have an algorithm that we can use basically to go back through all the other parts of the map to keep finding opportunities like these. But now we have like one potential action we could do, which is go off and research and dig into it and like literally just spend a couple hours Googling around. Like I would just make a permutation of every potential term I would think of around membership or community and connection and meeting each other, like, and just like run through every single one and see what you find.
And what made you pinpoint that one, Ben? Just out of interest, was it just because one you thought, I've got an idea behind that, or because I know I'm at a point in the book where Simon's sort of talking about, the whys of the movement, why here and not there, sort of thing. Yeah. And that's kind of where we're at right now, isn't it? Is why connecting and not, say, member data, for instance. Yeah.
The only reason that I could call that out is because I could smell it, basically. Like, so when you make enough maps, like, and you kind of do this on the regular, you start to notice patterns. And basically places where uncertainty or like false assumptions lurk. And so for me, it's like, actually, like, my naivety is helping a lot. It's doing a lot of work for me here because like I don't have any of the experiences you have around with this organization. And so I'm coming in fresh and going, is that really true? And then I just like say the words out loud. Is there really nobody else out there in the world who's connecting people together in order to solve problems? That doesn't seem right. And that's the smell. But like
Facebook.
Well, solving problems, creating a little bit of both. But anyway,
connecting.
You're totally right though. It's like anything that is a social network where there's a brokerage function happening, even if that brokerage function is informal, is functioning like this. And honestly, like, one of the things I think Simon would say too is like, well, why can't you just imitate nature in some way? Like, what is already happening out there in the world? Like, you don't have to reinvent this. What could you go study? And that changes everything.
It does. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great point. It's a great point, and it's something I've not thought about. I've not looked at, and it's a great point. There's so many companies. Social media is like literally connecting people together, isn't it?
Well, it's and that's not so. One of the impressions that you might get from this process is that you have to have be an expert in order to get what you need out of this. That's demonstrably false, right? So even if we had missed this insight, like, we just missed it completely, because believe me, we're missing like hundreds of others right now. Not to mention like the fact that our model's wrong and wrong in some like important ways, probably. I mean, we already identified that there's like places of ambiguity between solving problems and connecting that we need to like sort of figure out. There's also the request handling part of this. We're literally just understanding that better and having the words for it would go a long way. But we can use this algorithm of component by component going through this table and checking with these prompts, or just using Simon's tables from the book, right? You'll come across something eventually that makes you go, oh. So it's basically guaranteed, because so much of our systems are like modeled in ways. Well, they're not modeled, first of all. So that means that we designed them by accepting a lot of the defaults.
Yeah, that's true.
And so then we end up and we wake up one day and it's not working for us, and we're like, oh, what do we got to do about this now? So
that's great, Bennett. I've learned so much from this. And one thing, the ultimate thing I've learned here is that I need to go away. I need to start mapping things. Probably need to like walk into the supermarket and map out how they're processing the stuff. I need to start mapping things so I can get better at it, and then start. So then when it comes to the things that really matter, that I can map those out and really get something out.
Yeah. Well, I just want to. I do feel like I need to caution you from staying away from the things that matter, because honestly, like, if you spend time with the things that matter, you'll get the practice that you need, and you'll make the wrong decisions, and then you'll realize it later, and that's all okay. Like, but that's okay. That making mistakes is part of the game. And like, easy examples like the grocery store. You start to see the world in terms of value chains, and that gets really messy, because then you start to go down and down and down. You're like, oh my gosh, the reason that my groceries are using a different kind of receipt paper now is because a supply chain got disrupted somewhere. Like, that kind of like nonsense starts to surface, but like don't be afraid of just diving straight into the things that you care about. And Wardley mapping can be applied to work. It can be applied to like personal things as well. Like I've made value chains to exercise better and things like that. So like shoveling snow is another one. Like I don't know, like whatever you put your mind to, and like you can map in your head, you can write it down, like all this stuff. Get some practice, and you'll start to notice these like little places where insights are starting to lurk. But you don't need any
makes
particular.
Complete sense.
You don't need any particular insight. Like that's really the truth of it. You just need more insight than everyone else, or if you're just trying to be competent, like getting as many insights as you can over time, so that you're doing things towards the purpose of the system. So well,
awesome,
Rick. This has been fabulous. Thank you for being willing to subject yourself to this, and it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Ben. Really appreciate it.
And thank you to Tyler hanging out on the call for making notes and things like that. I appreciate you. At some point, I got to be careful about putting you on blast, but you're amazing, Tyler, and I appreciate you. So thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for being here. And with that, go make some maps. That's all I got.
Hey guys.
Bye, everyone.